Coming up on The Way We Were, Longbridge in its heyday.
Longbridge became this huge town, employing thousands upon thousands of people.
The launch of the Mini.
The lines were so sleek, it was neat, it was a perfect little piece of engineering.
And exclusive footage of a car-crazy Norman Wisdom. We all get a bit sentimental about our favourite family motors of the past.
It was a symbol of perhaps a little bit of wealth like today. They were driven with respect. You could have any colour you liked as long as it was black.
We were very lucky insofar as on our street, which was quite a long street, there were only two cars. One was my dad's and one was Mrs. Shreve, who was rather a posh lady who lived down the road.
Mine started with a handle. The indicators did this, you know.
My nan was very nervous and we'd be doing like 40 mile an hour and she'd say, try and slow it down a bit, Cyril.
When Dad parked the car, it wouldn't be there 5 minutes, but there were 6 kids around looking at the car. I mean, it was really an extraordinary event for someone to be able to get close to a car.
We'd sit and have a picnic on the side of the road, yes, you know, take the chairs and the table, and we did that frequently at weekends. Mother would pack up sandwiches mostly, and salad, and we'd take flasks. Later on we bought a kettle and a little gas thing, you know.
My wife and I set off about 7 in the morning and get down to New Forest for a late breakfast time and find a nice spot in the New Forest off the beaten track and get the cooker going and brew up some bacon and eggs and things like that. Very nice, that.
For many Midlanders, the capital of the car world was Longbridge.
Longbridge became this huge town, employing thousands upon thousands of people. We've also got to remember that a massive factory like Longbridge that was expanded in the 30s as a time of depression acted as a magnet for men looking for work, not just around the West Midlands region, but further afield.
They were coming in by train and everything to the factory, you see. They had a railway, of course, in the factory to bring the men in from all Bromsgrove, all over the place, really. And quite happy, really. We're quite happy to go to work.
Outside the time office, as they called it, was a passage where you entered. And the clock, you had to pull your card out the rack and put it in the clock, ding, and that was it.
I used to hound it up at Longbridge Lane, and the porter at the top of the gate, he'd say, come on, Dorothy, now you're in, I can shut the gate.
The family had been living at Leicester, moved over to Bromsgrove area in 1927. I was rising 16 then, and my father had a job at the Austrian Motor Company, and he got me an apprenticeship at Longbridge. There were a lot of apprentices, there were 150 to 200 of us in those days, and don't forget the Austrian was nowhere near as large as it did grow to. The car bodies in those days had a wooden framework. It was a long and laborious job. It took all day to build one car body, practically.
Most of the cars out of Longbridge were the sort of cars you went to school in. Cars that people could afford, cars that people remember with fondness, that bounced them around, you know, got them to school and back, or away on holiday. Those cars that very impressionable memories.
I started there in 1933. When I left school, my father said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'd like to do something in woodwork, which he said, well, you're not going into that now? He said, because in a few years' time, all the cars will be made of metal. So I went into the metal business. I started as an apprenticeship as a panel beater. From then on, I went into the body experimental, where we made prototype cars all by hand. There's no thoughts of computers or things like that.
Well, there were a number of good slogans down the years. You can depend on an Austin, you invest in an Austin, and of course Alston really, because it was always pronounced in rather southern speak by the 50s and 40s sort of voiceovers. That was the great thing about Austin, that the cars were perceived as well-designed, very sturdy cars. One of the great Austin designs, of course, was what we think of as the London taxi. Now, it's a very limited market, but in many ways, the Austin Motor Company cornered it. Very much a dependable product, the sort of car that Longbridge was very good at, very well engineered, designed to certain rather odd criteria, but designed very well.
This machine deals with £2,000 worth of silver an hour. It never makes a mistake.
And unlike today, wages were paid every week in cash.
The wages department used to fill the pay packets by hand. The foreman would go to the wages department and he would pick up a box, and the foreman would take it into the department, and they used to queue up by the side of the foreman's office. He used to pick that up every Friday. I used to get 10 shillings a week. They were always well paid, because people came from all over the country, because it was a well-paid job.
The siren blows for work to stop. Down tools, everyone. Put out the switches. Stop the machine.
Thousands poured out Southwarks gates. Literally, one mass of folks. A lot of them went across the road and down at the railway station, of course. But the vast majority streamed over to the tram stop. As fast as the tram filled up, off it went, another one coming in, off it went. Quarter of an hour, 20 minutes after 5:30, and it's all about. They'd all gone, the tram to take them all away.
It was a very happy place to work at. I enjoyed every minute of it, as far as I was concerned.
It seemed a sort of a little community somehow. Everyone sort of pulled together more. You cared about people more, I think, then.
Austin also made the J40, led by 96-year-old Alf Ash.
They decided to build a child's pedal car, and we were to design it. And it's got to be just like Dad's car. Not the tin-sided, slab-sided pedal cars that kids have normally got. Looks like a square tin, you know. It's got to be like Dad's car. Working lights, working horn. The body's got to lift up, there's a dummy engine inside, luft rails, sparking plugs. It's got a leather upholstery. A dummy instrument panel with the instruments on it. 2 wishwork, the lights and the horn. You've got to have a boot that's open to put the toys in. You've got a proper car, in other words.
As a pedal car, the J40 was in a league of its own. It was the Rolls-Royce of pedal cars.
Jeremy was one of a handful of lucky children chosen to take part in a publicity race.
According to Dad, I was gazing at a blonde when the flag fell at the beginning of the race. Utter rubbish. I wasn't, because I'd been coached by my 3.5-year-older brother to absolutely watch that flag, because the getaway was so important to a good finishing position. See, motor racing's in the blood. My brother Peter actually set the J40 up on the start line so that the cranks on the back axle were at 90 degrees, so I'd have maximum leverage with my feet in order to get a good getaway. This was an important event. I came third. I did stunningly well for such a young child.
And you were looking at the John Cooper daughter.
John Cooper's daughter,
who came
was I?
second.
Oh dear.
Yes.
Well, perhaps I pedalled quickly in order to try and catch her up.
Well, you may have done.
Was she a blonde?
No, she wasn't. She was brown-haired.
If I remember right, they'd built 32,800 and something of them. I know where one of them is.
After the break, we look at the world of motor racing.
I think I might have fallen in love with motorsport at that point in time.
And we catch Norman Wisdom in the act.
If you ask most people what are icons, British icons of the 20th century, they'll tell you about the Beatles, but straight alongside, most folk will also say the Mini. It's had this cachet. It grabbed people's emotions at a time when England especially was seen as the swinging capital of the world, with pop music, fashion and cars.
The Mini is arguably the ultimate made-in-the-Midlands motor, and it seems that no one has a bad word to say about it.
Had it from new, and I say I run it for 10 years, and we didn't have hardly any trouble with it. Always a crack it was.
They were, you know, easy to drive. All the Minis were great.
I paid £427 for it. That was complete with all the number plates and all the registration.
The Mini was launched in August 1959. It was launched in red, white and blue, which is intended to be a patriotic statement because they were the colours of the Union Jack.
These motoring correspondents took the new cars and drove them and saw for themselves how the clever suspension and the new engine position gave them a spacious car with such a wonderful ability to hold the road that they were a zippy joy to drive.
It was firmly aimed at the family market. It was expected to sell, you know, to a mum and dad and 2 children. That's what all the advertising, all the early sales literature was about. And that was exactly the market that was just not interested in it at all.
There's room for a few suitcases over the spare wheel, and that still leaves a gap for a coat and a little girl's bag.
The car was very difficult to sell. And for the first year, you know, it was touch and go whether the car would make it or not, because people just weren't buying it. And then it actually began to catch on with young people, which was not the kind of market that Issigonis had had in mind at all when he designed it. But suddenly it began to sell.
It was embraced by Twiggy and all those sort of guys, Peter Sellers, whatever. George Harrison had one, I think. It's just a perfect thing for the 60s, really.
Minis, of course, I think were very popular because of films and stuff, and so it was great to own when you felt you were part of the sort of the rock and roll set, if you like. In a Mini, you always felt you were going faster than what you were, which is great for a young lad.
Yeah, I still drive a Mini. One of the old ones and the new ones.
We went everywhere with it. Very, very good it was.
The lines were so sleek, it was neat, it was a perfect little piece of engineering.
But when it came to the real tracks, Rivers Fletcher was a name known throughout the motor racing world. A keen amateur, he was lucky enough to work for the British Racing Motor Team.
He saw a good opportunity to be involved in motorsport by going around the world and filming the success or failure of the BRMs around the world as a publicity device for the Owen organisation. I don't know whether it was particularly good publicity, but he had a good job out of it.
His wife Penny would accompany him as camera assistant.
Sometimes it was very hot and I used to think, what am I doing here in this heat? But I'm doing it because it's being paid and I'm getting a free holiday and I'm filming.
I remember we took the family Maurice Minor to Reims in France for Dad to film the French Grand Prix. And that sticks out in my mind because that was a big event and the buzz in the pits was just fantastic. I think I might have fallen in love with motorsport at that point in time. In those days, the racing cars, if you had a crash, there was a good chance you were going to get killed.
Well,
it wasn't
racing
the
cars
safety.
were built in those days so that if you crashed, the driver took the whole impact because the car was solid. Now, the cars fall apart, leave the driver sitting there, don't they?
And while Rivers wasn't filming the pros, he'd be busy building his own car, which he raced on the amateur circuits. With his family in tow, of course.
Mummy had a complete wonderful life of leisure. I mean, it was a privileged household. She had her own car. You know, we were a two-car family, pretty rare.
Right, from 45.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, the family was a bit swept up, wasn't it? A bit posh. You had a cleaner in to clean the house. I had a nanny to look after me when you were out motor racing and all those other things. You had life easy. By comparison to modern day, I'm in trouble. Mind you, I never got a new bike. I got a second-hand one. All the money went on motorsport.
Oh, yes, always.
And it wasn't just Dad spending the money.
Before the last war, it was very much a man's area, and shortly afterwards. But of course, war releases women, doesn't it, to do all sorts of things. And women started creeping into motor racing, doing the things perhaps that their husbands were doing, and they wanted to show them they could do it better.
While their parents raced, the boys spent the days tinkering with homemade contraptions.
Dad had acquired a three-wheeled invalid carriage, which didn't work. But Peter and I, my elder brother Peter and I, managed to get it going. And it tipped over onto its side, throwing Peter and I out into the flower bed. It's all right, Mummy didn't know. Go-karts were the order of the day, and they were cars without bodies, so I was actually learning quite a lot about engineering and about cars from a very early age. When I had an Austin 7 and took the body off because that made it too heavy, I could roar up to the house and, well, I could pretend I was a racing driver.
Next door to the Rivers Fletcher family lived a very special neighbour.
I can't remember how we met Norman, but he happened to live there was a lane at the back of ours on the other side, and his wife and two children lived there. And Rivers had a way of getting to know people.
And he became a family friend, didn't he?
He did.
Norman was always laughing around because he was a very funny guy, and Dad had a camera and he wanted to film this, and because he saw the opportunity to put this into the talks and film shows that Dad took all the way around the country.
At the end of the season, Penny shows the trophies to Eddie Leslie, who normally acts with Norman Wisdom in the films. And there is Norman, and there's something cooking. Norman has already hidden a wheelbarrow in the bushes of my garden and plans to steal my trophies with his friend Eddie Leslie. It's a careful plot.
Great fun.
Fantastically talented man. Perhaps people think of him as a clown, and a good actor. But he was a brilliant musician, and everything he did, he seemed to be good at.
Used to win that trophy.
And you'd go to his shows and he'd pick up the saxophone, and then he'd get on the drums and he'd be a brilliant drummer, and then he'd start to sing, and he had a lovely voice, didn't he?
He had a lovely voice.
Trophy. And when that goes, Penny accuses Eddie Leslie, threatens him, and chases him across the lawn, up the steps to the garden room. Just what he's been wanting. He locks the door and pulls the curtain, and we don't know. I suppose we'll never know. While Norman, with the trophies in the wheelbarrow, sets off for home in his own style. I come round the drive in the Jaguar just in time to see what's happening. So, of course, I set the dog on him. So I get the trophies back. I wonder what Eddie got. We'll never know.
Rivers Sr. passed away in 2000, but his legend lives on through his films and his son.
How many people can look at their dead father and hear their dead father talking and see him on films? Not many people.
Next time we take a look at the world of work, from the famous Raleigh bicycle factory.
It began in 1886 as a small workshop in Raleigh Street, turning out 3 bikes a week.
To our national service duties.
I thoroughly enjoyed my 2 years in the national service.